Stay tuned to the end of this video for a word to our patrons. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. Are you ready for a special guest today? No, I'm still hosting, but we're talking about our anniversary servant, new SSR Moon Cancer 5-star, Archetype Earth. Now, we must preface, this is not your normal episode of Wanted. Normally, Wanted includes real-life history and folklore, any Fate-specific lore and stuff, talking about the mechanics as a unit, and more, but Archetype Earth here is more of a special guest fighter to celebrate the 7th. She's not necessarily part of FGO's story, and also this is a Type Moon OC character, so there's not really much history. There will only be so much Type Moon lore, but we do have a lot of ground to cover. So we will be doing that. And also, while a lot of this stuff is tied up or discussed in the original run of Tsukihime, which was released in the year 2000, and thus we are way past the spoiler embargo, Ark's route in the Tsukihime remake is also kind of important to some of this stuff. You know, a lot of this stuff does draw on the Tsukihime remake. And Piece of Blue Glass Moon obviously just came out officially in English and other languages like a week ago when I wrote this script, and probably when you're watching this video. So there will be a potential spoiler warning for people reading at home about some stuff. And so then, we must start with the lore. I think the best way to encapsulate Archetype Earth is her own description as a special guest. She's like the platonic ideal of Arcueid Brunstead, one of the main heroines of Tsukihime, and each ascension has a different look and personality, and in fact her second ascension has a different alignment to reflect different stages of arc in her story and the appearances she's had over the years. She's not necessarily supposed to have any deeper place in the FGO story. She's just here because a lot of people really wanted Arc. Like, they talked about this in interviews around the anniversary. She was like one of the most hyped servants that people requested. And unfortunately, Nasu has a complexity addiction. Also, by Type Moon's own reckoning, Arc is one of their big 4 core mascot heroines, I would say. You know, when asked who the main heroines of Type Moon are, they have a list of about 4, and that includes Saber, Aozaki, Aoko, and Shikiryogi. And to do my normal due diligence about timelines and media, the original Tsukihime visual novel was published in the year 2000, which we mentioned a minute ago. This version takes a lot of elements from A Piece of Blue Glass Moon, which is a partial remake. It's just the Arc and Seal roots. This was originally published in Japan in 2021, so it's, you know, decently old at this point, but was released internationally just last month. 2024 if you're watching this in a later year. To explain all of her stages and how we get all these cameos and stuff and what they mean, we do have to do some very abbreviated lore about Tsukihime, vampires, ultimate ones, and other stuff. Pretty sure all of this lore exists on our channel in our podcast segments, which are titled Teach Me Omega Sensei. Hi, it's me, I'm Omega Sensei. This is a playlist you can watch, but I'm not going to make you hunt for the basics. If you do want to know more, I have done some more comprehensive research on stuff over the years. But also, some of those videos are old, so there's no guarantee that everything is, you know, lined up with current stuff either. But first, we got to cover something that's going to come in general. While what, at least in the West anyway, I've heard called Nasuverse is a shared multiverse with inherently many different timelines, these are generally split into Fate versus Tsukihime type worlds. The main difference is the Throne of Heroes or the presence of true ancestors and other stuff we'll talk about later. In short, the counterforce, capital C, capital F, always exists. It is the ability for the world to defend itself. However, the term the world, usually written with a capital W, is used both to refer to Gaia, the will of the planet Earth itself to prosper, and Alaya, the will of humans to avoid extinction. These are not necessarily in alignment. In Tsukihime-type worlds, for whatever reason, Gaia's will is stronger. The counterforce represents her will to keep humans in check and keep the planet alive, and often takes the form of elementals, like true ancestors, and thus reaching, or at least contacting, I should say, the throne shouldn't be possible. In Fate-type worlds, the counterforce is connected to Alai, who defends humans from extinction, thus heroes can be summoned from the throne to protect mankind from existential threats, and Gaia shouldn't be able to manifest true ancestors. Though, funnily enough, FGO at least does talk about how most people in at least the FGO timeline, or those, you know, who are mages and geniuses and stuff understand the concept of true ancestors. So there you go. That's the world split. Next, Ultimate One, also sometimes called Original One, and the way Original One is written can also be translated as Primordial One, are said to be the strongest beings from a celestial body in our solar system. Completely unknown if other solar systems have types. There's no exact definition for what a type is like. There's not really any boundaries on what they do, just they're so powerful on their own planet as to effectively be an embodiment of that planet and its potential. They're not strictly like Earth-based life, so they don't have normal senses of self, life, death, common sense, that kind of stuff. As for why planets can manifest Ultimate Ones, because they're cool, shut up. Also, in the world of Magecraft, there's a concept of an archetype, with capital A's, a planet brain. This is an entity born from the planet which has existed long enough to basically record all of its history. It seems linked with Ultimate Ones, because those are also called types, but the exact connection isn't defined, but we do use this phrasing for Archetype Earth, so it's probably relevant. The Ultimate Ones are a really big deal in notes, but we do hear about them occasionally in FGO, and if you know anything about what's up in South America, expect to hear more about them in Lost Belt 7. Now, so how do we get to a point where Ark is something bordering on the Ultimate One for Earth? Well, now we gotta do backstory stuff. So in Tsukihime-type worlds like we mentioned, Gaia has the counterforce on her side. She can call up extra juice to protect the planet. One of the ways she did this was basically by calling the Celestial Body Hotline for help in keeping humans in check, because humans were fucking her shit up, she couldn't have an Ultimate One anyway. There was no ultimate being on Earth. Anyway, the one who answered was the Ultimate One for the Moon, known as Brunstud of the Crimson Moon, or the Type Moon. And he is basically a mega ancient super vampire. Why is he on the moon? Don't ask questions. Put a lot of don't ask questions in the comments below. Anyway, Crimson Moon basically makes a deal with Gaia. He could come chill on the Earth, because the moon was boring. He would allow Gaia to model her apex predator antibodies after him. So these are the true ancestors. They're not really vampires. They're a type of elemental. They're manifested by the planet. Technically, you could call them fairies of the highest order. They're on the level of the A-rays we hear about in Lost Belt 6. They're manifested by the will of the planet. They're on a level completely separate from divine spirits because they're not influenced by mankind at all. This means that they have a lot of bullshit powers we don't need to get into, but the short version of that, you'll probably hear that phrase a lot today, is that they have a lot of bullshit powers because they're plugged directly into the planet. They get to cheat. But because they were copied from the Crimson Moon, they also have inherited his purely psychological desire to drink blood. Because we have to make shit up because somehow this is still a vampire story. But vampires are also ancient super aliens. Do you think Nasu's ever read a JoJo? Anyway, regardless of what type of world you're in, Crimson Moon gets his ass beat by Zulrich using the second magic. There's some specifics about that help the timeline split, but again, that's not actually relevant for Archetype Earth. Crimson Moon did know that his time was coming, though, because he is inherently not a being of Gaia or Alaya, so no matter what world he's in, he's not going to stick there. He left behind a method to basically recreate himself as part of the true ancestors. So vampires who are close to becoming a new incarnation of the Crimson Moon are considered royalty. They are given the title Bundestag because it sounds extra Germany. So all of that backstory setup stuff is to get to kind of explaining, Ark's whole deal. She's a true ancestor. She's obviously, because she's called Brunstad, she's close to becoming a new incarnation of the Crimson Moon. And now we can discuss the first ascension of Archetype Earth. Her personality is kind of the Princess Ark, a veritable queen of the true ancestors. This is a version who has progressed far enough to become equivalent to an Ultimate One. They do actually state that she can't, strictly speaking, be called the Ultimate One because, one, there is another candidate to inherit the Crimson Moon. There's another Brunstad out there. But also, again, this is one of those, Nasuverse gets very picky about terminology. There's some quibbling about, is she actually the Ultimate One, the world's strongest, thing, or whatever. It is also funny to me that despite the fact that this would be a recreation of the Ultimate One of the Moon, we're not the Type Moon. That's a guy who's dead now. We're Archetype Earth. But yes, in this sense, this ascension, the first one you get, is called in her profile the future. This is the form that Ark will always achieve because she is the one who will replicate the power level of Crimson Moon. And indeed, we'll talk later about some other appearances, but when Archetype Earth comes up in Melty Blood, where I think her on-screen appearance was first, maybe that or the Fandisc sequel, it's posed as a comment is Archetype Earth Ark getting in touch with her origin, like everybody's super modes in CCC, but No, according to Archetype Earth, her and Arcoid are the same being. It's just a matter of Arc reaching the level of being Archetype Earth in her development, or embracing the power she inherited from Crimson Moon to become Archetype Earth. So, like, they're the same, they're just operating a little differently. One of them is, like, a point in time which Arc can reach. And so, future. Her second ascension is called the Present. This is specifically her during Tsukihime, and most specifically, double specific, the remake timeline. Because it says it's after her meeting a certain someone, so it's after meeting Shikitono. This is the arc whose alignment is neutral good instead of chaotic good, probably because she's more balanced out and less haughty. Basically, the act of kickstarting her route in Tsukihime causes her to, like, go through a dramatic personality shift for reasons we don't need to get into, because you can literally play this stage or watch somebody stream it. Good luck if you want to see the seal route, gotta buy it yourself. But that said, explaining this stage overmuch would be giving away Tsukihime. Just know that this is the one that's most like her as that heroine. If you like Arc in Tsukihime Remake and just Tsukihime Arc in general, the second ascension is the one that's closest to where her mindset is. That's why she's called the Present. The third ascension is called the Past, but is also kind of a what if. There's some backstory stuff to explain why her Princess Arc personality, that is, you know, where Archetype Earth is at, shifts to the personality of the second ascension, which is been called several times Funny Vamp in this case. And again, we don't really need to hash all that. Just purchase the Tsukihime Remake from your preferred computer game retail outlet. But the third ascension is an Arcoid who hasn't experienced the greater world and human culture yet, or been changed by backstory. So she's more innocent and reserved, but also still has some of her Ojo, you know, her princess archetype qualities. It is kind of implied this is the FGO timeline equivalent of Arc. In interviews, Takuchi said that for third ascension he wanted to go above and beyond what they already had, because the first and second basically hit what the fans were expecting out of the character, but Nasu himself really likes adding extra layers and nuance. So third is more of a funny princess, is the comparison I think it got translated as. She's halfway between the two kind of personalities. She's a character who in the Tsukihime world story doesn't exist anymore. You know, Arc has gone through development for reasons to be different from that. But if she did show up normally in FGO's narrative, the third is what Arc would be like, maybe. Now, all three versions of these are separate and can interact. They just hang out in the same sync graph like Valkyries. So, while as a playable unit you summon one card and get to pick and choose your ascensions, hypothetically, if they were to appear in story, and maybe in her Valentine scene and stuff, all three of them are separate and can just hang out, which is, you know, weird and funny. And of course, as I mentioned, you know, earlier, the name Archetype Earth was used to describe a souped-up Arcoid in Melty Blood as a separate playable character. She insists that she and Arc are the same person, but still, you know, they have our origins much earlier. This is a variant of Arc that's existed for a long time, and they, like I said, wanted to go above and beyond for a anniversary character. How above and beyond? Well, after about 15 minutes of setup, it'll probably be a little shorter in the edit, but 3 pages of script, let's talk about mechanics. But yes, after 3 pages of script on just the Fate background stuff to explain that we really went whole hog on designing a special guest cameo character, mechanics. 11-point font, single-spaced, by the way. So, Archetype Earth is a SSR, 5-star, Moon Cancer. Pour another one out for the only BB can be a Moon Cancer believers. They need that copium. Now, you'd think, based on her stat spread, she leans more on the HP side, but in general, Moon Cancers are hella defensive, so Archetype Earth is technically the highest in attack and is on the lower HP side of her class, though obviously Moon Cancers are not as offensively skewed as, say, like, Berserkers or Avengers are. She's not, like, gonna be, like, all-time high in terms of attack. It's just funny that this class has been skewed so heavily towards HP that Archetype Earth is the highest in it. She is QAABB, with slightly below median NP gain and slightly high hit counts on 4. So she's like 0.45, and she's got 4 hit counts on the Quicken Arts. It's not going to be a big deal, trust me. Her NP, and yes, this will require a little bit of explanation, it's AoE Buster. It deals damage to chaotic enemies based on NP level. So the more NP you have, the bigger the trait damage gets. It also, based on Overcharge, gives all living human allies, except herself, 20 to 40% NP battery. So it starts at 20% flat, Goes up to 40% if you have maximum overcharge. Also, the special thing here is, and this is very important that it does this first, it creates a Millennium Castle Battlefield trait, which changes the battle screen and everything, lasting 3 turns. So it changes the battle screen, changes the BGM, I think, sets a little icon to let you know that we've stuck a change on the field itself, not on the servant, on the field. I'd love more action on this. I don't think we've really done a lot with it, though. But we do have a couple of notes. The castle buff is on the field, not the servant, so it can't be removed. Buff strip doesn't do anything. The graphics will reset if you change battle, so like between waves, but the buff remains. This effect can be extended by looping her NP. Every time you activate her NP, it resets it another 3 turns. And if Arc dies, the field goes away. I do not know how that works if you have double Arc situations. I assume that it checks which Arc is the source of the buff. And if that one, the one who most recently put up the buff, dies, it goes away. But yeah, no, it's a possible big hitter with some interesting stage effects and very striking stage effects, but also some very interesting interaction with your team. So first skill gives all enemies skill seal for 1 turn. Also gives them 3 turns of 10 to 20% defense down, and gives herself 3 turns of 20 to 30% attack up. That means that wave of enemies is effectively giving you 50% attack up, because to remind everybody, in case you're clicking on this video and you haven't checked out some of our earlier wanteds about how mechanics work, buffs that are of a similar type basically are additive. Defense down is basically in the programming, a conditional version of attack up. It just increases your attack stat percentage-wise. So yeah, that's effectively 50% attack up when you're attacking those wave of enemies. Her second skill is a 50 to 100% battery. I didn't really intend the voice crack there, but it works. It also gives her 10 to 20% NP damage for 3 turns. But yeah, 100% battery if you max that out. And her final skill is a 1-time, 1-hit, 3 turns invul for the whole party. Gives allies with good alignments. This means her, by the way. Both of her alignments are good. They're just chaotic and neutral. A 50 to 100% buff removal resist for 100, for 1 turn. For 100 turns, it'd be crazy. But for 1 turn, it's 100% resist if it's maxed out. Which does mean that unless they're like the 500% chance to remove buffs, buff strip before NP will not work on the invul. That's very good. And also, if you're on the Millennium Castle battlefield, it gives other party members a further 20 to 30% battery. Big juicy. Her passives are also pretty bonkers. She's got Magic Resistance A+ for inherent debuff resist. So her inherently, she's hard to debuff. She's shaving off like, 1/5 of the chance every time. She's got Territory Creation EX, so those arts cards are real juiced. Like I said, you don't need to worry about her NP gain being a little lower. She has Item Construction A, so those debuffs do stick, and has an Independent Action A for a passive crit buff of just 10%. And she also has her unique Ultimate 1 passive. So if you're on the Millennium field, the Millennium Castle field, which, by the way, activates first on her NP, she gets a 30% up to all her card types like she's under a projection active skill. Crazy. Just indefinitely, while you were on her special NP battlefield, she gets 30% to all her card types. So she's basically permanently under like a level 1 mana burst at all times. Bunkers. Nutso. So, as you can see, we are not skimping on this guest character who's a major heroine super mode and called an ultimate one. They're like, Archetype Earth, the ultimate one. Super Arc. A new guest character exclusive to this anniversary. She slaps. She's crazy good. The Arc farming meta is going to be pretty strong. A lot of people talk about this for probably about a year exactly. Actually, no, it's funny. I think you're going to hear about this for about a month because while Arc farming is very good, and I'm going to explain why, a lot of us arts heads are like, ooh, but some are Ibuki, though. There's some real back and forth here, but no, this is going to be very good. It's very strong because she has a Hundo P battery, though with a 7-turn cooldown. Reminder, you will need to use double Koyan and the Atlas Academy skill cooldown to completely reset it. It's 7 turns at its minimum. Though, of course, you're maxing out the skill because it's 100% battery. This also gives her NP damage up. This sets her up to, when she activates her NP, you're going to get a whopping 30% buster up from her passives. And also, she has a skill that's 30% attack as well for 3 turns. And it does a trait damage, with Chaotic being pretty common. This is going to hit hard. It's going to slap pretty good. And if you can set her up to loop it, to reload, though depending on enemy strength, you may be able to actually get some buster normals in, get a buster chain, and actually charge that way off of Koyan's passives or something, or do like NPAA. Either way, you're going to do big damage on a class which is mostly damage neutral. This is very similar to like how using aggro like AoE Avengers and Rulers works, because this is a class that does neutral damage to basically everybody except Rulers, who take damage penalties anyway. You're going to get some serious damage extension out of this. But also, potentially, you don't even necessarily need her to actually loop. Obviously, yes, double Koyan works. I explained that if you use both Koyan cooldown skills and an Atlas Academy, you will over the course of a turn completely reset her 100% battery skill. So you can 100% battery, fire NP, double Koyan Atlas, fire NP, third wave, 100% battery again, fire NP. It's very straightforward. And in fact, because she has a Buster AoE NP, it may have been designed this way. But you also don't have to do it that way. Between her NP and her third skill, you're looking at giving allies who are living humans like a minimum 50% charge, possibly even more if you can stack some overcharges on there. And living human is actually a pretty great trait. It includes a lot of pseudo-servants, demi-servants, and cameo characters. So she's got great synergy with strong hitters like farmers, like Muramasa and Ishtar, future team members Durga. Also, Aoko Awazaki counts as a living human. But also ST boss blasters like both versions of Chloe, Fujino, Ilya, etc. Also, if you actually have Avenger enemies to farm, Jinako, Ganesha is on that list as well as living human, who's also a Moon Cancer. So you can actually set up some team comps here. Like 50% battery potential is nothing to sneeze at. Plus, a lot of those guys have their own batteries. Also, this is in addition to the fact that while she has a very strong offensive toolkit, she's got very solid defensive tools as well. She's got a hard defense and an invul, which is linked to a buff removal resist. And she also has a skill seal. Whether or not skill seal is actually a defensive tool kind of depends. It's one of those things where, like, under normal enemies, you don't want to bother because that means that they're going to be attacking instead of wasting their turn on skills. But some enemies have really annoying skills, so skill seal is good. Anyway, this means that Arc has potential for boss battles as well, because, again, she has a trait damage on her NP, and also, the NP could just be to set up that, like I said, NP BB chain with fucking 30% on those busters. It's gonna slap. In terms of direct craft essence usage, since you're rocking 100% battery, you can probably skip straight to Black Grail, or something like Heaven's Feel or Limited Zero Over if you're scared of the self-damage. In general, just apply whatever's your biggest, bunkiest stick. Whatever gets her NP, especially the most damage output from your CE collection, apply that. You could use 50% charge CEs, like if you're not going to try like a double Koyan and you want to try some setups there, you know, there's some, or you're using other NP chargers like Waver or something, you know, there's an option. It's not really in my script because, like, I feel like I said before, this unit is designed with double Koyan in mind. You can hypothetically mix her with other Buster supports or with Buster Arts hybrids. Like, Merlin would give her more hard defenses, give her more NP recharging, and even more offense, but he doesn't offer, like, the maximum amount of charge refund that the double Koyan strat does, so it's hard to pitch that, you know. But Waver is generic and does offer 50% batteries, and you could maybe use the damage plus and the crit buff. But like I said, double Koyan of Light seems like it is what Arc is designed to work with in terms of support slots. And for CEs, it's very similar, just like whatever you do that maxes out the damage output. NP damage, Buster up maybe if you want to get it in there. Consider free stacks of overcharge to make that, if you're fighting a boss, I should say. But free overcharge is usually used up first. You know, it's only temporary. It's like one time. So wasting that on the first wave of ads, not going to do anything. So for other stuffs, since Arc is a Moon Cancer, Ascension is pretty straightforward. It's just statues. You're going to alternate Berserkers and Casters. It's pretty good. Skills gives you some leeway in a similar vein for a while. You just use skill gems for quite a lot of them. But once you're out of the skill gem stages, things do get a little spicier. You will need a handful of rarer mats like Fantasy Scales and Comet Shards. You know, like 9 Comet Shards per skill. So not like crazy, but it is something to keep in mind. But thankfully, no bronze mats. Pretty straightforward. Now, as you might expect from a special guest, Arc is actually pretty rare. I don't want to alarm you, but her only standalone banner, rather, is this anniversary upcoming. But as a limited SSR, you can expect to see her on all future Lucky Bag GSSR summonings. And I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up as like a bonus banner for like a day or two at this year's new anniversary in JP as well. But there is no guarantee. As we've seen with Draco, they can stick to their guns on rare cameos. So, like, this may be your one shot for this special cameo, other than, rolling your lucky bags. But yeah, that's what I got. Like I said, she's not really involved in the plot, so we didn't need to talk about, like, bonus servant stuff. She's just chilling. This is What's Up. Happy anniversary, guys. Hope you're enjoying our anniversary. Hope you had a good, or having a good 4th of July weekend, because 4th of July was a Thursday. Best of luck in your almost guaranteed pity rolls. I kid. I know some of you are gonna get those higher NP levels for more slams to your jams. But it is funny that because of the anniversary, like, permanent fixture that Ascending Servants now gives Saint Courts, that depending on how many servants you have, you can easily, like, and how much courts you've saved up, you can easily get enough stuff in your present box to basically guarantee hitting the pity cap for Arc. So yeah, that's cool. Great unit. Had some fun writing this. Consider buying Tsukihime, etc. Keep your eyes peeled, and we'll be back for more. Also, probably, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to be live streaming Let's Talk FGO to talk about the anniversary panel or something. Not exactly sure about the timing, but it is a morning panel and a middle of the day maintenance. That's pretty wild. So keep your eyes peeled on that one. And if you don't know, by the way, if this, like, breaks containment, we do a regular podcast, Let's Talk FGO, every week about FGO news. We also tack on, like, whatever's up with our day at the end, because sometimes FGO has late news days and weeks. But if you want to catch updates about, like, brand new servants in JP, banner length, previews to events, check out our podcast. Probably a link in the description, link in the end card to the playlist, in addition to Wanteds and stuff. And yeah, good luck on your GSSRs, everybody. And that's that. So give this video a like, subscribe, leave your comments below. Join our channel memberships on YouTube memberships, emotes, badges. Consider supporting us on Patreon. Could have gotten a preview this video like a day early. Also, if there's ever a music edit, like I do a musical gag that doesn't work on YouTube for copyright reasons, I just upload the raw files to Patreon so you can hear everything in its full glory. This will probably work, but, if you've ever watched a previous one and wondered why there's a weird audio gap, Patreon. It's fine. And more about our patrons in a section, but I'm going to play a audio outro. And before we go, we'd like to thank our patrons. All of them, but especially Adam DeHart, Blacklist OG, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, Flightless Icebird, Jeremy Vasquez, JDV9000, Jester LeFay, Chris Starlight, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Rise of Kenji, Rogue Robin, Sharbor, Sean Pyre, some guy named Bob, and Varian the Crow. If you like what we do, want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. Thanks, guys.